Hi, I'm Liz Juchems. I'm a Conservation Outreach Specialist with the Iowa Learning Farms based here on campus at Iowa State University. And cover crops are getting a lot of press, but what exactly are they? So we're going to talk about a little bit of Cover Crops 101 here with my presentation, and we're going to kick things off with the basics. So cover crops are plants that help cover our soil between our cash crops. They're typically planted in the fall, just before or following harvest. They are not harvested as a cash crop, but they can be fed to our livestock, whether that's through grazing or harvesting the forage. They provide that green cover to our fields during the brown months of the year, so typically from mid-October through even mid-May some years. And they provide many benefits while they're out there, specifically reducing soil erosion. It's one of the biggest, most visual benefits we can see. They also assist with recycling our nutrients, helping improve water quality. They provide and maintain for our soil organisms. They help increase soil organic matter, increase our productivity of our soil through infiltration, and as I mentioned, they provide that feed and forage potential. And we've actually seen when you can get enough above ground biomass so that what you can see growing above the surface, we can see weed suppression of our winter annual and early season weeds. One of the biggest questions that we hear about cover crops is what impact do they have on our corn and soybean yields? And we looked at this question specifically by asking, are corn and soybean yields affected by winter cereal rye? This began with paired strips scattered across the state of Iowa, established in the fall of 2008 and 2009. Each site had 3 to 4 replications, much like that picture illustrates there with cover versus no cover. And all of our sites were in a corn and soybean rotation, and most were managed as a no-till operation. What we found over those nearly 9 years now is that after the first 2 learning years, corn yields were maintained across all of our sites. So once they got the hang of making sure that rye was terminated ahead of corn and adjusting planter settings to deal with the additional residue that's out there from the cover crop, our producers reported no yield difference between the strips with and without the rye cover crop. And actually 2 of our sites in southern Iowa in 2016 reported a statistically significant yield increase in corn yields, and we'll see if that trend continues this year as they rotate back to corn. Similarly for soybeans, they were generally maintained or even saw some yield increases following that cereal rye cover crop. Our soybeans tend to be more tolerant of that additional biomass out there and actually seem to thrive a little bit from that competition. However, management is still important, making sure you get that rye properly terminated and planter settings adjusted to deal with getting that furrow opened and closed to get the seed stand you're looking for. But cereal rye is not the only cover crop species available for us to use. Which species that'll have success in your operation depend a lot on how and when you're able to get them out there. So if you're able to drill or plant before September 15th, so you're following maybe a small grain, maybe seed corn, or maybe even some corn silage, you're able to plant pretty much whatever cover crop species you would like because you're going to get that seed to soil contact. However, if you're going to be using an airplane or potentially an overseeder to get that cover crop in there before harvest, typically between August 15th and September 15th, recommend that you narrow that down to simply your grasses and brassicas, those putting on a taproot. And if you're going to be following that combine after harvest and drilling and planting after September 15th, recommend that you stick with your grass species as they're the lowest cost and put on the most growth that late in the growing season. We looked at this by comparing different seeding techniques and species, and what we found was that timing is the most important factor in getting good biomass production and cover crop establishment. So the earlier you can get that cover crop seeded, the more growth that you're going to be able to achieve, whether that's with a high boy or potentially an airplane, or if you've got something coming out earlier, getting it drilled or planted. We also found when comparing mixtures versus single species is that on their own, rye and oats were the most consistent performers in our corn and soybean systems here in the state of Iowa. The rye and the oats also provided the best return on investment when it came to biomass growth for the cost of the seed and establishment. As we're coming into spring, producers with overwintering cover crops like winter cereal rye need to think about their termination plan. Herbicide is the most common method used statewide. It is most effective when used on a sunny afternoon, temperatures above 60 during the day and staying above 40 during the night. We recommend if you're going in to plant corn to terminate that cover crop 10 to 14 days before planting. Soybeans, you can hold off to maximize your spring growth and spray within 1 to 2 days of planting. So what I'd like to leave you with today is that corn and soybeans are a fundamentally leaky system. So the cover crops can help us fill those brown months, fill that void, help us both with our water quality and soil health concerns. They can be readily integrated into our corn and soybean systems, offering many benefits as mentioned earlier. And we're recommending that you start simple. Oats and rye are tried, tested, and true, and relatively inexpensive and easy to establish. We've also found that timing is an important factor for your success with cover crops. Getting it planted as early as you can and making sure you're getting it properly terminated in the spring to minimize any yield impacts. If you'd like to learn more about cover crops, I encourage you to check out our website at iowalearningfarms.org or follow us on social media.